Kings. And let's start with Orlando since it has that segue from the Lakers. And we talked about him a little with Jack, actually, which was unplanned. But Franz Wagner, Chris, had an incredible FIBA tournament, won the gold medal with Dennis Schroeder and company. And I mean, I kind of talked about the size aspect of him, and I think he's continuing to learn what that middle game, in between game is going to be. If it's not drive all the way to the basket, if it's not crazy pull up three like he's Trae Young, what is it? And that's what I'm watching. But he's been off to a great start, and they've been pretty solid as a team, which is not how they started last year.
Yeah, and it's interesting to watch how he's working. You know, he's getting guarded by Dylan Brooks in the game against Houston, which is a sign of, I think, respect to put Dylan Brooks, who is, for all his shenanigans, a very good, strong, physical on-ball defender. And you see him in the situation where you can see he's still, I think, learning like he's growing in real time a little bit, right? Like there's a moment in there where he goes to a step back and he's like looking for the step back, and it's just like, it's not to set up something else or give him options. It's really just to get the step back off. And that's such a low percentage shot. That's not a great look necessarily, right? But I get why he's going to it. I get why it's in the repertoire. It's a shot that I think will be key for him to hit. The footwork looks like it's there by all accounts, right? Mm-hmm. But you're seeing him, I think, test his limits a little bit with stuff like that. And I think the next evolution for me is to see, okay, can he take something like that more regularly than he is now and use it to get a defender off balance, get into the paint, get a midi up, get to the rim, which he's already pretty good at getting to the rim, finding shooters when he drives and creates penetration. That's going to be like the next step for me, is like, how does he kind of use some of these moves to get off shots and then turn them into other things and create advantages for Orlando? That's kind of the big skill for me I'm watching with Franz, but he's been really good to start. It's been really fun. They're going to be awesome. I don't love the piping on their jerseys as well, but I think we pick good jersey teams in terms of color. Like we did good there. So all of this to me is it's good. It's intriguing, and I want to see him. Like I can't wait to see him, Brendon, play against the pick a good wing defender. I want to see him how Franz does against those guys just as much as I want to see Paolo against those guys, frankly.
Yeah, so it's only 2 games. Like, I'm not trying to overreact here, but just to give the numbers, down in terms of floater and rim attempts, which he actually has gotten there quite a bit. But again, it's kind of that long mid-range or just sort of the passing, which he's a very high IQ player. What happens if those plans aren't there? And then the threes have been huge. He's taken almost half his shots from deep. But the bigger trend that I think has caught my attention with Franz is, and we have 2 other smaller data points from Orlando's start to get to as well. But in my opinion, I think the shots are a little too spread out with this team. And of course, they've beaten bad teams twice, right? Like Houston looked ugly in that game, and that's the one I think both of us focused on. But then in the Portland game, it was fairly similar. They got out to a 8-point halftime lead. But you had 16 shots for Franz against Portland, 12 against Houston, and nobody's taken more than 20 shots in a game for this team. It's a lot of Cole Anthony, which it sort of has to be because he's one of the only guys who's a sort of 3-level scoring threat on this team. But I kind of just want those guys to take over, Paolo and Franz to just take over. I know last year they were overburdened kind of having to be the creator all the time. They have the balance now, right? They're turning defense into offense a little better through both of the guys we're going to close out this segment with. They have Fultz and Anthony healthy, Ingles even, floor spacer with Harris. It is set up for them to take over better than it was last year. They're both a year older, so I kind of actually miss that. I want them to play like they're the best players on this team because they are. And maybe that comes in a game where they're tested more, but that's been something that kind of caught my eyes. I'm just like, where are the 2 best dudes, and why are they not dominating the way we know they can?
Yeah, I think that's part of them growing up a little bit as well, right? Like they're going to have to grow into that to some degree. I think that's as much as they've had room to grow, I think there is still like an assertiveness. And I think part of it too is if there's something Cole Anthony has in spades, I think that guy's not a deferrer. Like some
Yeah.
of there's gripes from Celtics fans. It's like Marcus Smart is going to take the biggest shot because he doesn't defer.
Yeah.
Cole Anthony kind of is that guy as well. So I almost am just like, maybe you got to find ways to like really put Cole Anthony in a box and let him cook in a very specific way, and let those guys
Yeah.
kind of have more organic freedom with him off the floor in some ways. Which is
And he
like
just
why
got his
I
back,
like the other.
so there's no stopping him. He's
Well,
ready.
I would also say that's like a tradable salary number. That's all I
No,
would say on that.
solid contract, and I think we're both agreeing, right? Like they kind of need him to
Yeah.
do what he's doing. So I'm not saying like Cole Anthony is shooting them out of games or like stifling
No.
Paolo and Franz. I mean, he's still barely taking 10, 15 shots a game. This is not like, Jordan Crawford or something. It's productive, but it is just like, honestly, hell, I would rather say like Cole Anthony can also take 20 shots a game, take some from the other guys and let the three best scorers kind of cook a little bit. But again, they've been winning. It's been pretty easy. So maybe it balances out. Jalen Suggs, surprisingly in
Yes.
the starting lineup. We did our Orlando preview so long ago that we didn't have any training camp quotes, media day stuff, preseason footage to pull from. But I think you and I were mostly in agreement that maybe Suggs in that five was best long term, or maybe even Suggs developing enough to replace Fultz in that five and another shooter being in there. Like that might be their future. But I think we both agreed guys like Ingles and Harris probably would be more likely present positive pieces. And they just said, to hell with it. We're going to start Suggs. And he's playing basketball like Jalen Suggs, I think, is how I would put it. I just don't love the shot selection as much as the defense is a huge, obvious positive for this group.
Look, and I think too, there's a point where if they have ambitions this year, I wonder how long, it shouldn't be 5 games. It should be something like 25, 30. But I do think you're going to need him to shoot better, both in terms of, I think, his selection, which I think you're dead right about, but also his accuracy. He's great at the rim this year, which is really inflating his effective field goal percentage. But he is at 25% on threes, and he's at 33% on corner threes, according to Clean the Glass. That's with, not a ton. It's a little. He's taking more threes based on percentage by a little bit than last year. Hasn't made a shot in the mid range yet, and that's 28% of his shots. Only 28% of his shots at the rim. That's down 5% from last year, down from 39% as a rookie. He should be a 3D and rim guard. Like that's what he is to me. If everything works for him, but he has to actually hit the threes. He actually has to be something a little more than what we've seen, and he has to be a guy that can provide spacing. Like there's all these other benefits, but there has to be more, both as a spacer and I think a little bit of playmaking as well, which I don't think we've fully seen come from him yet either. So I like that they did this. I think this is great, but I think there is going to be a point if this team does have hopes of ascending this year where I wonder, okay, they have to say, okay, we can't ride with this at a certain point very early returns, but that's kind of what I'm looking at with him. Does some of this offensive stuff actually evolve in a real way?
And I think to kind of combine some of what we're talking about, the shots that he's comfortable taking happen at times when the best players don't have or use the dominating creation ability and make a great possession out of the half court offense, right? And that, like, bad players being overly involved can be not bad. Developing offensive players being over involved can be a symptom of an offense that doesn't have a plan, right? It's the Tony Allen thing, it's the Marcus Smart thing, to your point. That is a byproduct of what happens when you don't enter each half court possession going this guy or that guy, this set or this set, this type of shot or that type of shot. You suddenly have Jalen Suggs saying, all right, sure, I'll take a shot, Also, I think you're dead on one just to finish on your point that Suggs is a much better open court player than anything else. That was what he was great at Gonzaga. That's what made him interesting and special. The dude played quarterback. We all know the story. They have run on the fewest percentage of their possessions in the NBA. Again, 2 games, but they are dead last in terms of transition frequency. That just shouldn't really be the case for such a young team and a team that has so many playmakers. You'd think that they can just hit that outlet pass and just boom, it's a layup, and they don't really take advantage of that. So that would be an easy thing for Suggs to just flip the switch and wow, he just got 6 more points a game, or whatever, 2 points and an assist out of just focusing on that transition attack. But what did you have?
The other thing I would just say is this is someone, to your point, like that has been at the center of everything for probably his entire basketball life. In some ways, right? Like think of the Gonzaga team. He hits the defining shot of that tournament, right?
Yeah.
I mean that sparked, at least in here, Brendon, debates that he should go 3 over Mobley, like that, and over Scotty. Like that was like a real thing that
him
happened,
over Scotty was like a given. We all thought it was a lock, and then it was a surprise that Toronto picked Barnes. Yeah.
Right. There is, again, it's year 3, so like you kind of would hope you would have figured some of this out by now. But I always, and maybe he'll not, it's hard to ask guys these questions. It's you're never going to get, I think, the full truthful answer on this because it's not a very fun thing to say or talk about, really. I get why they wouldn't want to. But I do wonder if there's still just, like, he's adapting to, it's like his role is clearly kind of one thing, but does he still think it's bigger than it is? Does he, like, where does this, the kind of his understanding of how we fit in some of this, where is that kind of understanding of spatially at right now as he's kind of going here?